Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. I'm Colette Geary, president of the college, and I'm just very pleased to have this opportunity to celebrate the Feast of St. Scholastica with all of you. And I extend a very warm welcome home to our panelists who are here with us today. Thank you for being here to share your insights with us, and I look forward to your reflections. I also want to extend a very warm welcome to those who are joining us on Zoom. The college has celebrated the Feast of St. Scholastica for many years, but this is only the second year that we're hosting a Benedictine Values panel, and I think it's a really wonderful addition to our events. St. Scholastica and her brother St. Benedict lived in 6th century Italy, and they lived in a time that was marked by enormous strife and conflict, and they rejected many aspects of the secular world around them, choosing instead to live lives that were firmly grounded in their faith. And as you know, Benedict famously wrote The Rule of St. Benedict, which is a short little book, but it's meant to serve as a guide for those who lived in monastic communities. And it's not a book of rules in the sense that it deprives anyone of their free will, but it's a set of guidelines for life with others that brings a sense of order and stability. And it draws from Scripture. In a way, it's about right relationships with God and with one another. And it's about using one's personal freedom to make good choices and to live authentically. And the way that it's written, it's almost as if it was an older sibling writing to a younger one who's beloved. He's kind of saying, listen and understand. I'm sharing this with you for your own good and because I love you and because I want you to know who you really are so that you can live up to that. And it binds one to another out of mutual care. And so from this rich tradition that's more than 1,500 years old, what has been handed on down to us here at the College of St. Scholastica is our own Benedictine heritage. And that has happened through the very remarkable and visionary sisters of St. Scholastica Monastery. And we've had this for more than a century. And what shapes our experience right here on campus today are the 5 Benedictine values. They provide guidelines for how we live together as an educational community. And as you know, these values are hospitality, community, respect, stewardship, and love of learning. And so today's speakers are going to reflect on the significance of these values in their own lives. They're alumni of the college. They have important things to say about these values. And we are so proud of them and who they are. And that's why we invited them to speak to you today. And I'm looking forward to the rich reflection and sharing that we're going to hear. And now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Gary Boelhower, Professor of Theology and Religious Studies, and who serves as a member of the college's Mission Integration Committee. And he will introduce our guests properly and facilitate the discussion today. Again, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Geary. And thank you, each of you, for being here and giving your attention to this important dialogue today. These values of respect and community, stewardship, love of learning, hospitality, they are foundations for us. And in our Dignitas classes and other classes and other programming, we continue to explore them. We continue to sort of mine the truth and the wisdom and the richness of them because we're never done with them. On the one hand, they're a foundation, they're a ground for us. And on the other hand, they're kind of like ideals, right? They're like stars. We don't ever reach them, but we chart our courses by them. They continue to challenge us. They continue to call to us. And I'm sure that after today's program, I'm going to say things like, if Diane Tran can do that, maybe I could respond like this. If Krystal Hoheisel is putting that value alive, bringing it alive in her own life, then maybe I could do something about this issue in my community. We hope that these values of course, are not just helping us be the kind of community we want to be here at St. Scholastica, but that they become for us habits of the heart. They become embedded in who we are, in our character. And we take them out and live them out the best we can every day of our lives. So it's a tremendous honor for me to introduce 3 of our esteemed and amazing alumni who are living out these values in exemplary ways and are, of course, struggling with them. How do I do it even better? How do I take these values and make them come alive? And so they're going to share with us examples, stories from their own lives, not just in terms of their professions, their work life, but also in terms of their family life, their life in a community, to help us, again, ask questions of ourselves. How do I do it? How can I put them into practice? Where might I be challenged to be more respectful, more hospitable, more communal, etc.? So let me, first of all, introduce them, and I'm going to introduce them quite briefly. I could spend 10 minutes on each of them, but we want to get to the questions. So I'll just say a few sentences about each one, and you can read the other kinds of material about their sort of biographies on the core webpage if you would like to learn more about them. Krystal Hoheisel, just to my right, graduated from CSS in 2015 with a degree in marketing and a minor in computer science and economics. And during her time at CSS, she was involved in Student Senate, Students Today, Leaders Forever, and the 56 Nights program. Currently, she's a freelance website designer and social media marketing guru and restaurant manager. She's doing all of that. So, thank you for being here, Krystal. Diane Tran created her own self-designed major in international social policy, as well as double majoring in humanities here at CSS. She is currently Senior Director of Neighborhood Integration and Community Engagement at Health East, part of the Fairview Health Services. She serves on the boards of the Minnesota Humanities Center, Minnesota Philanthropy Partners, Propel Nonprofits, the Citizens League, and she serves on our own College of St. Scholastica Board of Trustees. She's also the founder of Minnesota Rising, a statewide network of emerging leaders committed to Minnesota's future. Thank you for being here. And finally, Joe Wicklund. Joe graduated from St. Scholastica in 2000 with a BA in communication journalism. He has held jobs in newspapers, television, radio, the rental car business, and healthcare. In 2006, he returned to CSS as an admissions counselor, also taught several courses while he was here, and served as an assistant baseball coach. Since 2013, Joe has served as the Director of Enrollment at Marshall School here in Duluth. He also serves as board chair of Grandma's Marathon and is on the boards of Destination Duluth, the Montessori School of Duluth, and the John Baggs Memorial, among other kinds of civic involvements. Welcome, Joe. So let's begin with our first question. The value this year, as you know, is the value of hospitality. And so I'd like to ask Krystal and then Diane and Joe in turn, How have you put this value of hospitality into practice in your life? Tell us some stories about that.
I think it's a lot of the little things. So when you're going throughout your day, and especially here on campus, there's not many times when you're going to walk through a door and there's not going to be someone holding the door in front of you. And those little things when you leave campus kind of go unmissed, and that you have to bring those little things to life. And especially, you don't need to go out of your way to create something huge to make a difference. If you see someone struggling, even if it's at the grocery store reaching something, I'm really tall, so that's like my go-to is if I see someone struggling, you help them out, and it's 3 seconds of your time just to make their day, or to go ahead and show that little bit of kindness that could make their day all that much more better. And especially here at CSS, you go through the 4 years, and I think one of the best values we have is hospitality, and just that everybody is very kind, and that we know that we're a community here, and that we're truly are a family, and that we're just not going to school here to earn a piece of paper, that you're developing friendships and relationships that are going to last throughout your college career and then even life after that, and that showing that little bit of kindness really develops those and keeps your heart kind and keeps you going throughout your career, as when you go into a different profession and you're in that different community, showing people that you are there and that you do care about them and you care about their day. It's a lot of little things, so don't let them go unmissed, and know that every day you can make a difference doing something small.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to first thank Krystal for being someone who is taller in the world and is very thoughtful about folks who might need a few inches in their wedge shoes. And it's really an honor to be here and be back on campus. I love coming to this place. I love the people that I get to see and catch up with, and then just to be inspired by all of you who are helping to create the CSS of today, and who I know are going on to amazing things. So it's an honor to be here today to celebrate with you all. So my examples are not too unlike Krystal's, and I appreciate as well Gary's point that these are questions we continue to struggle with daily and throughout life. There's always more to learn. So certainly a growing edge for me as a homeowner and a new mom is really thinking about how it is that I'm hosting and welcoming others to meals or to my house or to spend time with my family. But one area I have tried to spend a lot of time on over the years as someone who helps to convene in community and bring partners together and invite people to meetings is really thinking even about the way we interact often, which is in meetings, either through student groups, out in the community putting together events, and really thinking about folks who are coming to the table that we're inviting to participate and want to welcome their participation, and what as a host I can do to be able to create a context for them that welcomes all of who they are and to be productive and engaged in that meeting. And so there's the piece around what is this conversation, what is the agenda, and is that sent ahead of time to people so they're aware of what's going to be discussed, that if they're a processor or want to do some research and reflection ahead of time, they have that space and opportunity to do so in a way that works best for them, that they might not feel put on the spot. And then to think, too, in the meeting, as we welcome people, offering time to say, what their name is, a little bit about themselves, to check in, so that we're not just here to do work, but to be together, to fellowship a little bit, and to be in relationship, so that we have that coming in and can also orient as to what's going on in our days, and not feeling like we have to set some part of ourselves aside in order to get to the business that we're here for. So there's that piece around what are we trying to accomplish together, and how we set people up to be able to do that ahead of time as well as during the conversation in different ways that work for them. And then there's the physical piece, knowing that, yes, we are minds and folks who get together to discuss, but we're also these whole beings that have other aspects to our beings, our mental, our physical, our spiritual. And so how with providing food and beverage, making sure that people understand where the facilities for bio breaks are, if they need some type of accommodation to be able to provide for that, that those things are also acknowledged, so that, again, as people come into a space, they're aware of what they're there for, and then feel welcomed both in the physical as well as the conversational sense, to bring what it is that they have to offer for a productive conversation. So those are a few of the ways that through work and my community involvement, I've tried to bring this value of hospitality and to keep learning all the time how to do it even better.
Thanks, Diane. And I'll echo what Diane said. It's a real treat to be back in Mitchell Auditorium, and it's easy to remember when I was in your shoes sitting on that side and getting to hear folks talk about these types of things. So it's kind of a neat turnabout. When I think about hospitality, and this will echo a little bit about what they both said, but I think of it as much as, kind of like Diane said, an invitation to be an incredible host, and to think about that across multiple spectrums and needs of what your audience or what the people that you're bringing into whatever kind of environment you're hosting in matters. And I think the first part, like Diane mentioned, is so important in terms of the invitation. And this isn't just the idea like, my office door is always open and people know that they can come in it, but the idea that how you interact even outside of meetings and spaces that are yours, whether you're in the hallway or whether you're visiting with somebody at the water cooler, all of those types of pieces are put together in someone else's mind about how approachable you are, how hospitable you are, how connected you are, how caring you are, should an important work need come up, or should an important personal need come up, or something related to whether you're talking about specific projects at work or something that they feel like they can confide in you in outside of the work world. And I think some of that, how you present that invitation, can certainly be both formal, like it's your Gmail invite, but can be oftentimes more powerful by the informal, that you're a type of person that people know they can seek out, know they can go to for those types of things. So there's kind of that air of hospitality about you all the time. But that second piece that Diane talked about is to be hospitable and to provide great deals of hospitality isn't any mark you ever reach. You're kind of always working towards that. And the way to best do it is, what do those around me need? So if I'm hosting a meeting or I'm hosting a gathering or I'm even in a conversation one-on-one, it has to be as much about what the other person needs, what they might be perceiving, how I can move them from where they are to where they want to be today, as opposed to simply, just being kind. Really kind of dialing into what someone else's needs are. So hospitality to me also encompasses a great deal of empathy that needs to be a part of it to be able to kind of be successful and move that needle forward for you in terms of that important value.
Sure.
Sorry about that. This is what I love about panels, is getting to hear from others and be inspired by it and then want to continue the conversation. So the thing I would just add on to this idea of being an incredible host is the importance not just of hosting others, because we're talking about very outward focused, and that is a lot of where the idea of hosting comes from, but that requires, as you talk about empathy, the self-knowledge and self-awareness to first host yourself, and that isn't a selfish act, but it in fact puts you in a place where you understand your own self-interest and that balance with selflessness to be able to be in a place where you can be strong and solid and acting from a genuine and authentic place to be able to effectively and respectfully, as Dr. Yuri mentioned, in right relationship, host others. So thank you for that allowance.
Yeah, excellent. So this idea that we also have to be hospitable to ourselves. One of my mentors said, self-care is never selfish. It prepares us to be open to others, to be good hosts for others. Yeah, thank you. Just to give you a little bit of sense of the process here, we're going to do maybe 4 or 5 questions that we've prepared, and then we're going to open up the floor to you. So you might jot down things as you're listening, or other questions that you might have. So we'll have a little bit of time for you to answer to ask your questions, and then we have a few others in case you don't have a number of questions. We'll continue with other questions here. So our second question, and Diane's going to start us out on this one. What's your favorite CSS value, and why? And again, how are you trying to bring that alive in your life?
Yeah, thank you. I would say it's very hard to pick, but the one that always resonates most with me, and being in an academic setting right now, is the love of learning. And I think that is with regard certainly to wanting to continue education, having after graduated from CSS, doing some continued work in project management, doing some graduate level courses, And then, using community education as an opportunity. One of the things that I've done on the side is to start sort of a trilingual special occasions greeting cards company, something really specific to my own personal interest, being able to do some graphic design, which is a new area for me, and then an entrepreneurial endeavor, which is always new for learning. And so in a couple of weeks, I'll be using St. Paul Community Ed's classes around accounting and bookkeeping so that I can, spiff up my ability to do that work. But I love trying things for the first time, and I'm very much an experiential learner. And so it's a lot of fun to be seeking, particularly in a resource-rich area like the Twin Cities and like the state of Minnesota, opportunities to try something new and different. So in recent years, I've tried the adult circus camp with Twin Cities Trapeze, and so I've done a little bit of flying in the air. And played flag football with the Alzheimer's Association as part of their fundraiser of Minnesota and North Dakota, and so got to wear purple as well, and won. Defense wins championships, and again continue to try things in lots of different ways, not just in sort of the professional and community way, but also becoming a mom. So I have an 8-month-old boy named Rory, and he is just the light of my life. He is incredible, and it's so fun to watch how someone who doesn't yet have words can still be so expressive and clear about who he is and what he wants. And so I've learned so much already from him and about myself and my husband as a result of this new adventure that we're on together. But I really take every opportunity in life to be a learning opportunity, and to be able to balance a sense of competence with complete incompetence. I try to always have a few things going on that I have a sense about and have familiarity with, so I have those things going in life so that it isn't as big of a bruise to my ego when I completely mess up at the first day of a new class or a new endeavor. But I think that's what keeps life fun and exciting and continues to challenge me to grow. So love of learning is something that I value and really try to live out in a lot of different ways personally.
So Diane mentioned what she really likes about these types of panels are how we can play off each other. One of the things I dislike about these panels are when the person in front of you steals your answer right before you're going to talk about a love of learning. So I'm going to come at it with two different things, because I think Diane's answer is really wonderful. I think about love of learning a lot, too. I'm approaching a very watershed, large numbered birthday later on in about a month. And I think about oftentimes how at age 18, when I first entered kind of the hallowed halls of St. Scholastica, that I was pretty sure I was probably as smart as I could have possibly ever been at that point. And that what's been wonderful about all of these learning experiences, and really, part of what really was cultivated here at St. Scholastica was a deep, deep well of curiosity. And that's kind of the word that I think of most with love of learning, is the idea that, ever since that it's been proof that I do not know much more than I do know. And that's really wonderful to be able to tap into kind of what you don't know and kind of what you would like to learn and what's beyond your fingertips and where you feel a little bit of discomfort in regards to that. And now as I get older and I do more work with high school age students all the way down to 4th grade, and I do some mentorship pieces in the community with young adults, that I think it's the idea of being able to really relish the idea of that curiosity and what you don't know yet as a starting point. But to me, that also quickly jumps into the idea of stewardship, because also, oftentimes I think when we think about stewardship, it's oftentimes about something that's right in front of us, and that we have to take care of this object, this piece, this environment, this culture, this piece that's right in front of us. And stewardship oftentimes reminds me that there's something much further out. When I hear about President Gary talking about the relationship that we fundamentally have with Benedict and Scholastica, all these years later, we're talking about hundreds of years away from Italy, that in some capacity their stewardship at that time really connects with all of us even today, regardless of your faith background or your approach or your ideas of this being a wonderful story or just a bit of history. And I think of the impact and changes that I make in the lives that I work with now. At some point, not only will they have hopefully a meaningful connection next Tuesday, but we'll also play out in a way that's meaningful for folks that I don't interact with front and center. So the idea of that stewardship helps push kind of my lens out even further than I normally would have, and makes me, I think, take a little bit greater care of the relationships I have in front of me now, knowing that they could have an impact decades, if not farther, down the road.
So I'll throw a curveball and just cover the other two that we haven't talked about yet. I think they kind of go together, both community and respect, and especially just getting a job out of college and being in an environment that wasn't familiar to me. Showing respect for everyone around you became really essential, in that I could sit in a meeting and completely agree with the person sitting across with me and then completely disagree with the person next to me, and that I would have to just like breathe through it and be like, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, but I couldn't tell them that, and that it's a growing, you're going to constantly be growing and they're going to be growing with you, and that showing them respect and giving them time to voice their opinions or give their views is totally okay, and they're totally entitled to that, and you're entitled to your own. Especially in this environment, even my close friends I was disagreeing with, and it really like came a point in our friendship that I was just like, we can't talk about it anymore. We have discussed all that we can discuss, and we're going to agree to disagree. And it became a kind of hardship in my life, because they were my community, and that they were the center pieces to my life, and that they were the friends I went and talked to about my problems I had or the successes in my life. I shared them also, and just it's a back of your thought mind that they're going to be your friends no matter what, and that you really do have to just take a seat and let them do what they got to do, and you got to be your own person too, and that the community that you surround yourself with really says something about you, and that especially at Scholastica, our community here is one that is a gift, and that I remember the first week I got on campus that I had this like epiphany happen when I was driving down the road in a car with kids I had just met a week ago, and I was like, what? My mom told me not to do this. Like, this is not to get in the car with strange people. And I was driving down the road like at night to go have half-price apps, and I was like, this is not good. Like, these kids, I've only known them for a week, and they turned out to be my best friends, and it was crazy to me that a week in that I had not known these kids, and 5 days later we were best friends, and that we had practically known everything that we needed to know about each other, and that it still carried on past the 4 years, and that the community stays with you, and that they're still sharing things with me and helping me learn along the way. But it's something that is truly incredible, and that even if you don't think that you're a part of the community here, you definitely are, and that somebody really does care about you, and especially if you don't show up to class or you have something going on, like, they know that something's wrong. They share every day with you here, and that they are your second family. So whether you know it or not, community is going to be something that follows you both on campus and off campus when you leave.
Thank you, thank you. It's amazing how these values are so interrelated with each other, right? So respect is all about creating community. A community of people is a community who sees the uniqueness of us and not only recognizes that, but cherishes it in a way. And in order to learn anything, we need a community of people. And so the inextricable nature of these values always fascinates me. Joe, I want you to start us out on a different kind of question. Tell us the story about a crazy or stressful time at CSS and how you got through it.
So I was insufferable as a high school student. I tell students I work with at Marshall and other students that I work with in the community that I wouldn't have liked me. 17-year-old Joe and 39-year-old Joe would have not been compatible. The game of high school came very easy to me. I'm competitive, I'm kind of type A, I looked at getting good grades as winning. I grew up in a really small town in rural northern Wisconsin, so the opportunities to kind of be a big fish in almost no pond existed in a huge way for me as a young kid. And so when I think about chaos and I think about stress, I think about my sophomore semester Principles of Management class with David Swenson. And I would tell you that it was the first time that it was clear to me that the letter that I was going to receive on a piece of paper at the end of this experience was not going to be the letter A. It was not going to be close to the letter A either. In the alphabet, it wasn't going to touch the letter A. And there was really no amount of like negotiating and politicking and relationship building and connecting that I could do with Dave Swenson to make it work. And so I hated him. It was clearly his fault. And I remember this was 1998, so Dr. Swenson was pretty progressive. Out of our professors at that time, he had his own website. Nobody else did. I remember going on his website, dialing up his website, and talked about how he made his own salsa. And I remember thinking, no, he doesn't. That's a lie. He sits at home and makes my dreams not come true with this class. And the bigger part of this class, the big chaos piece for me, the big challenge was I loved this class. This wasn't something I didn't like and wasn't engaged in. This was something I loved, and it was beating me up, and I just wasn't very naturally skilled at it. And so there was probably a couple of nights I won't tell you about where I laid in the fetal position in Summers Hall crying about how my first identity crisis was happening, that I wasn't a straight A student. I was just a straight A student with this one glaring C that can't be a D, or I don't know what I'll even do. And the relationship that I built with who ended up being Dave to me, even all the way through graduate school when I came back, and we've even taught classes together now in the graduate program around marketing, really challenged me to realize that there's so many different ways both to measure success and to hold yourself accountable for the skills and abilities you have. So it turns out that the hard lesson I learned at 19 was that there's lots of different ways to be successful. It isn't simply measured with the letter A, and that having the idea of a 4.0 doesn't have to be the make or break moment of your entire life. The second part is that a lot of extraordinarily powerful growth can come out of complexity, discomfort, and the relationships that you need to build when you reach out and ask for support and help in those types of pieces. Because those are only going to be things I think you do in something you care about and that you're passionate about. And this Principles of Management class my sophomore year was something I was just super into, despite the fact that it was driving over me like a steamroller on a regular basis. So really the biggest piece to the question, Gary, was the idea that I reached out. And more often than not, when I find myself in a spot where I lack the expertise I think I need to be successful, or I'm completely clueless on the next step, I'm infinitely better all the time at raising my hand and asking for help, grabbing someone who can provide support. And again, kind of like I mentioned in my first answer, kind of relishing in what I don't know and learning about it so that I can have an opportunity to grow and to find out some new horizons and build some new relationships in that. I finished with a not B, we'll say, in that class. A not B.
Did it touch a B?
I was trying to think of one story that really stuck out to me, and I just can't at the moment. I think my senior year was a chaotic story of just you come in and you're like, this is my last year, okay, everything's led up to this moment, here we go. And I was like, okay, 1 year, I got this, it's fine. Christmas vacation went, and I was like, I don't got this anymore. I have 1 semester left, what do? I do not feel prepared, I don't know how to do my taxes, I can barely do laundry. I need some help right now. And my senior year, I was student body president, so I had, on top of my course load and trying to get internships and trying to get in that corporate environment, I was trying to do the most for the students here, my friends, the kids who had stuck it out with me for 4 years. And I remember one specific day, I was walking from the apartments and back, and I didn't live on campus at the time, so I was already upset that I had to park all the way back in lot 17 and walk through the snow. And I fell and slipped on the white strips of death, the crosswalk in between the apartments and the parking lot. So I was like, that's double mad, this can't get any worse. And then I walked into Storm's Den, my favorite granola bar was sold out, and so I was like, this day's lost, this is it. And my friends had this running joke that they wanted a zip line on campus, that as president I should get a zip line that goes from Tower Hall to Summers and that you could take it to class. And obviously that was never going to work, but they thought it was absolutely hilarious to constantly bring it up and to call me a bad president for not getting a zip line. And I came in and my office was zip lined back and forth from either wall with little notes saying how I could get it done and what they would do if I would make the zip line happen. So then I couldn't sit down at my desk, and I was like, this is it. I'm just gonna go and sit in my classroom and wait. And that day I was in my honors class with Tony Barrett, and if anybody has taken classes with him, you know that he's a very smart guy, and he's gonna tell you how he sees things in the world, and that you're gonna learn a lot from him, but he's gonna tell you that you're wrong sometimes. And I had put a lot of effort into this paper, and he was giving them back, and I saw that it had an A- on it. I was like, this is it. This is okay. So I waited until after class, and I went up to him, and I was just like, I don't know, like, this is gold right here. I put everything I know how to do into this. Like, this has all the right font. What's up? And he looked me dead in the eyes, and he said, Krystal, nobody's perfect. And I think I had an out-of-body experience where everything I knew shattered, and I was like, what is this to this day? And he's like, it was great. All your points, you made total sense. You got it. You understood the concepts. Like, you really nailed it. And I was just like, I don't understand. I need to leave. So then I had class with him again. So I came back, obviously, so it wasn't that bad. But I remember staring at him, and I just had nothing to say because he knew he was teaching me a lesson, a big life lesson. And going off of what Joe said, that sometimes the lessons aren't the grades, and that you definitely have to learn things the hard way and know that they're teaching you valuable lessons, even though at that time you hate them and hope that they also slip on the sidewalk. And you're just like, if you knew even like half the stress I've been through today. And then the day just kept on. This was only noon, and I was like, I got a lot of way to go. And at this point, it was later into the spring, so I was getting ready to transition through to the new president, and I had this binder, and it had multiple pages in it, and spreadsheets, everything I had done, everything that you needed to know, who to go to get bathroom help, who to go to get shovels, everything. It was the end-all, be-all to student body president, and I lost it. I have no idea where it is. I had to create a new one, but at that point, you're just like, oh, wow. Like, this day, I need a nap, and I need to go home. And I remember that I was walking back to my car on Lot 17, and I had saw somebody coming, and they're like, oh, how's your day going? And at that moment, you're like, do I lie and just be like, good? Like, just let me go, or do I, have a total breakdown? And the real value to that is just that, they had the compassion just to ask me how my day was, and that in that moment, they really just wanted to talk to me and hear how I was doing. And it's something at CSS is every time you have a stressful day or something's going wrong, you got to know that somebody's going to be there to listen, and that that's what community is about here, and that there will be stressful times. There will be times when you just want to give up and call her quits, and you're like, college isn't for me, but know that you're going to get through it, and that it's definitely, at the end, going to be totally worth it, totally worth your time, and that, like Joe said, the grades aren't everything, and that it's the lessons you learn, the relationships that you take away that are really going to make you you.
Wow. I'm wondering if I need to call somebody out by name and be like, I made a voodoo doll or something. I don't have as specific of stories, I suppose. And so maybe what I'll point to is just having had the opportunity to study abroad and away a couple of times as part of my experience here at Scholastica. My first chance to do so was through the Cuernavaca program in one of its first years. And just that whole semester obviously was, not necessarily crazy or chaotic, but just being in a completely different environment in a country where English is not the national language, and being able to go in a community was really powerful. To get to go with some of my first year roommates here and be with some of the professors that I knew, to have some sense of space there, I think was one of the ways that I found support in being in a completely different context. And I think what maybe was really jarring about being able to be in a different country, and particularly in Mexico, is thinking about, you know, us in the global north here and recognizing that as we learned about the circumstances of the people that we were studying with or meeting with or doing homestays with, the children we were teaching or caring for, was just that the lives that we lived up here in Duluth were not inconsequential to them, and the geopolitics of the relationships and the community that they live in. And so that ability to sustain a really big shock and to know that what you do really matters to other people, whether you choose to believe it or not, was really shocking and was hard, and I think took a lot of processing, and is something that still I carry with me to this day about when I have the opportunities, the privilege, the responsibilities that I do here in this country, in this state, with my various statuses. You know, what are others experiencing that are not like that, and how can I either, you know, create no further harm or do what I can with what I've been provided to be able to make things better. And so the things that allowed for me, again, to be able to move through that time of very intense personal and public learning, were again that supportive community, the professors who were here who had such wisdom and to be able to teach in an academic way, but also to recognize that as students we were, again, these minds as well as hearts and souls that they were helping to shape and craft and host in a supportive way. And then just the richness of the community and the people that welcomed us into their homes and into their classrooms, that the Mexicans we interfaced with were really generous and warm-hearted, wanted to share of their culture, took us salsa dancing and to eat the best tacos al pastor. And so just to know that it wasn't one narrative of this, you know, dejected place that, you know, we were creating a lot of challenges for, but that there was so much life and vibrancy that we could learn from, that we were being invited to participate in, and the question then being not how to you know, diminish the burden that we were creating, but to really invest in and allow for more of that, you know, generations since old heritage, culture, tradition, and to think of the ability then to be able to learn in a cross-cultural way and to act in a way that creates more of those cross-cultural linkages. So more of a kind of semester-long story, but one where very much the community that we were surrounded with made all the difference.
Thank you. So Krystal, start us out on this question, and maybe we've touched on it a bit already, or maybe you can go into your second experience of a key learning experience for you, or one of your most influential or impactful learning experiences, and why?
I think probably the most impactful experience I had was actually in my Dignitas class my freshman year. And I had Professor Jennifer Rosado as my teacher, and at that time I actually had declared my major as computer science, so it made sense that she was a computer science professor and that I would be in her class. And we actually didn't really talk about the topic of computer science at all, and it was more real life situations about being on campus, what do you think of college, discussing like heavier topics. And one day it was about homelessness and how it would impact you as a college student, and how normal college students are living either like dollar to dollar, they're on a strict budget, and like how you could help out and really play a role in helping the issue, or if you cared about the issue. And we had some conversation, you were in groups, and she actually got up, and I remember, like, I can picture everybody sitting around me, and she actually like had tears in her eyes, and she had started telling us a story about how she was in a situation where she was a single mom and had 2 kids, and how these like programs and how different volunteers had helped her out. And it just became this like full circle moment that this professor who I had looked up to, that I thought was so accomplished, she was, you know, going to get more degrees, was writing these huge papers about coding, she was a female in computer science. Like, this was I had looked up to her all semester long, and to realize that she was going through issues that I would have never thought, that it's really like that face that you see when here at school she was that like end all be all woman of power that I could look up to, and then she would leave and she was going through the same issues that other people even that were facing it without a college degree were going through. And it was just this moment of like, wow, we really have to pay attention to the people around us, and like these little things that we can do can really impact somebody. And mean even like when they're at school with a degree, with a car, that there is still things in their life that aren't perfect and that they're working through. And for her to show that side of her, I was 18 at the time, like for her just to show that much emotion to me and to open up, it was just like that moment sitting in the classroom was, I think all of us, like the class just grew silent, that this was a real issue and that we are a part of this with her, and that she had mentioned that like being here at Scholastica and being with the students had like helped cultivate her into the person she is now, and that even when we go through tough times, that there's going to be that light at the end of the tunnel, and to just really keep pushing through, and that we're going to go through them, but it's what we do in the end and how we get through it that really matters.
Maybe just a quick story, because I saw Tom Morgan in here earlier. Just to say that one of the more impactful items was when I was a senior and I was a mentor for a first-year Dignitas class. And I had known Tom for a number of years through being in the honors literature class and with his cross-cultural exchange work as well, and then being an active community member in Duluth, just had a lot of respect and value for the work that he did, and so was excited when I was invited to serve as a Dignitas mentor with him. And then I learned that the topic was dystopian novels. And I just am someone who likes to focus on the positive in life and just think of what can be and, asset-based and that kind of thing. And so I was going to have to spend a semester reading through and supporting these students through these dystopian novels. And I did it and really enjoyed getting to dig in and to learn from the student responses and essays as well as from Tom's teaching. But I think it's what Joe referred to earlier with the ability to learn from discomfort. Is obviously there's so much richness in there as it relates to potential future worlds and what it exposes about ourselves and our, what's hypocritical about us as humans. And it's so instructive, but I don't know that I would have chosen it on face value. And so it's, again, the impact is where the relationship and the trust was in this professor, the ability to go on this journey and learn a lot by sitting in some of that discomfort and being in that space as well. So thanks, Tom.
So I've got a couple different Johns to talk about in this particular spot. When I think about, the learning experience, for me there's a couple of different moments, but I think it's an overall kind of growth piece, Gary, that rings true. And then the two folks who pop in my head right away are John Baggs and John Shifsky. So the journalism major was kind of also like a little bit like Diane's major, where it was a little bit self-designed when I was a student here. And really what it was a major in quality storytelling, whether you were doing it on TV or radio or in the newspaper. And what John Baggs taught me over the span of the classes, some of which I ended up teaching here at the college eventually in feature writing and things like that, was that the act of telling someone else's story, that taking the skills that you've learned in an environment like this and applying to someone else's story and telling it is about as sacred a work as there is. Because it's not your story, it's someone else's story. So there's an extraordinary amount of responsibility that comes with really telling someone else's story well. And John had all these delightful ways in his own way of bringing that up, like reading your paper in front of the entire class and then crumpling it up and throwing it at you if it wasn't well written. So a lot of character building experiences with John. But you realized that there was this really elite bandwidth that you were shooting for as a storyteller. And then with John Shifsky, it was kind of the opposite approach, where you were in this warm, wonderful bubble where you realized that even outside of storytelling, but the actual choice of each individual word you choose matters. That some of the fundamental pieces of rhetoric and all of the different lenses we bring to the table makes words and makes our communication not only challenging, but in some capacities you could argue impossible, simply because we all have such a different definition of father and community and family. But how do we get to a point of understanding of this shared experience that we are certainly sharing with each other when we all look at it very differently? And so the combination of those two things, the power of each individual word and the thoughtfulness that should go into selecting them, at the same time the sacred approach of telling someone else's stories, those are the two of the most meaningful pieces that I had during my 4 years here.
What an amazing way to express that value of respect, huh? To understand the preciousness and the responsibility of telling that story. Wow. So these are 5 absolutely astounding values, intricately and inextricably connected to each other, that are foundational, that are stars that help us chart our course of life. But Diane, start us out on this question. If you were to choose a 6th value, what would it be and why? Or maybe there is a 6th value that you've chosen in your life in a way, and what is it and why is it so important?
Yeah, I would say the thing that sticks out for me that I've been trying to practice more of is generativity. And so that's the idea, just like I referred to with that asset-based approach, that what we do and how we are is really meant to forward the conversation or the interaction or what is happening. And so trying to build on, or in the world of improv, the idea of yes and, that rather than shutting others down, and not even, I think it's about not being passive, certainly, shutting down ideas or just standing on the moving walkway, but really proactively trying to, in every interaction, space, relationship, encounter, acknowledge in hosting oneself and the other person, what are we trying to get to, and how can I help that come to light sooner or with more energy, with more purpose. And so it's this just idea of yes and how it is that we see ourselves not just as passive participants, but people who are there to create as very active, proactive agents of change.
When I think about it, I agree with you, Gary, that the 6th in some capacities are the 5 together, which is kind of a way, I think, in which those values become a part of who you are as you continue to grow and as you continue to ingrain and continue to kind of execute those values in your life. But I also feel like that's a little bit dodging the actual answer to the question. For me, I think there would be the additional part that I would add to this is kind of the idea of just like responsibility. And that's kind of a broad piece, but the idea of both the acceptance of it, that the parts of the world that you are active and creative and matter in, you have a responsibility to do your best work there, to be present, to show people you care, to give 100% of yourself in those moments. And I think that idea that there is a responsibility are the types of things that allow us to kind of own things when they don't go as well as we would like, and own things in a really more meaningful way when they do. I think responsibility is the part that helps us kind of raise our eyes up from whatever device is in front of us to the community that's out in front of us and the impact that we can have on those. That responsibility is the part that at the end of the day makes, in some ways, tomorrow I get up and I do this again because I have a responsibility both to myself and those that are around me. And I think that there's a piece to that certainly fits with probably all 5 of the values in terms of responsibility, but if I was going to pull another word out, that's what it would be.
I think going off of what Diane said about the yes and philosophy, I think I'd probably have to say it would be curiosity as the 6th one, and that especially during college, this is like the time to explore, they tell you, and the time to find out like who you're going to be and what you want to do. And especially sitting in some classes, I felt like, okay, I'm taking this like to get the credit done. And in other classes, I would sit there and the professor would really encourage me to go on. And if I had a question, they're like, why don't you answer it yourself? Like, get back to me. And most of the time it was like to cover up that they probably didn't know the answer because I was very specific, and they were like, no, like this is going to be a learning time for you. And they really developed that like curiosity sense in me, and that I majored in marketing, but I concentrated in analytics, and like the both of you kind of created that major, that avenue that I wanted to be in, and that I was curious about different courses, about different topics, and they weren't offered here at the time, so they were going to give me every avenue to achieve that, and that they wanted to develop that never-ending sense of learning for me, and that it really taught me that even though like you might not find it here, or you might like your resources might be limited, that they're going to try and give you every tool that you could possibly need to develop that sense of curiosity in you, and that using your community as resources or trying to find something off campus in the Duluth community, that they're really trying to develop you as a whole human being and not just a college student, that they want this full circle effect going around, and that throughout the time here that you're going to get little pieces added here and there, and then once you come to graduation, you're probably still not going to be full circle. You're going to be continuing to add on and learn more and more about yourself as you go on throughout your life.
3 continuing challenging values: generativity and responsibility and curiosity. Yeah. We'd like to open the floor for some of your questions. So if you have a question, come down to one of the microphones. As you have experienced, they're willing to talk about just about anything. So whatever question you have, I'm sure they are happy to give a try at. So come down to either one of the microphones.
Obviously, kind of on the topic of respect, we're always going to be coming in contact with people that we don't agree with, whether it's your classmates, it's your peers, it's people that you're working with at school or in work. But how do you continue to show respect to the people put in authority of you, and not just your friends or people that you choose to interact with, when you completely disagree with what they believe, their morals, or what they say? Is it easier to kind of fake the respect and talk behind their back, or have you found yourself rather running away from a problem, or do you face it full front and try and find real respect for someone that you don't necessarily agree with anything that they say?
Did everybody hear that?
So let me just repeat the question. How do you respect someone that you totally disagree with, especially perhaps if that person is in power or in a power relationship? Do you try to face it head on? Do you try to run away from it? So this is a really critical question, I think, for us, maybe at any time, but I'm feeling especially in the time that we live in, where there's a lot of kind of political polarization, right? And so critical question. Who's up? Joe, I think you're first.
So this is a really good question that I would have answered quite a bit differently at different stages in my life. So I kind of have two answers to it, and one is as amazingly different and as opposite and as annoying and as wrong as the person across from you is. I always think about, in some ways, one of the rules of St. Benedict was the idea of listening with the ear of your heart, and the idea that the person across from you, no matter what, is still a person. And so I'll reference Professor Swenson with the idea of him making salsa as opposed to making my life hard. He was this real person that I just couldn't fathom the idea that that someone so paradoxically different than me, who was such a source of consternation in my life at age 19, could go home and mix ingredients and make salsa. So I think some of that level of understanding and basic respect comes from the idea that the person who you might have a disagreement with you, they are not defined by what you are disagreeing about. They are an entire person doing all kinds of different things in their lives, which may or may not be limited to making their own salsa. It may or may not be limited to being someone's father, brother, or son, mother, sister, or daughter, and having all the complexity of those relationships in their lives the same way we do. The other part that I always think of when I come up to challenges, when my personal challenge, and that's why it's not, I've never really had a hard time, to be honest, I've never really thought about faking respect. And I've always kind of also been really straightforward with people for whom I have a disagreement, but I don't have a lot of people, I think, I hope, who hate me because of that. Because I do want interactions to be beneficial for both parties, which doesn't mean we endlessly fight. We can just sit on a particular issue in two very different spots. And we can come to terms with that or have rules of engagement around it, whether it's an issue that we talk about constantly or don't, whether it's a work relationship or a friend. But I think it's the realization that the person who's across from me is not defined by that. I also think it helps, the old analogy is that if you took your problems and you laid them out, and all the rest of the community members and all the folks you know and don't know laid their problems out right here on the front of the stage, right here at the Mitchell Auditorium, how quickly you would work to pick your problem back up. Because other people's journey and other people's challenges that you don't know about may be really, really even worse than yours. So that person that you're across from at odds with, even if they're in a position of power, they're a professor, they're a boss, they're a parent, and someday they are your kid, like those relationships is the realization that they might be on a very hard journey too, and the steps that they've taken to come to this moment might be totally different than you'd expect. And that there's some understanding that comes with realizing that again, even on this issue, the person across from me is still a person, and this isn't the only thing they're about. And maybe there's something else to the equation that I'll never learn that makes this such a stressful or friction-filled moment.
Just adding to what Joe said, I am the type of person to be very passive about things. Like, I'd rather just let them voice their opinion and sit back and listen, and I have a hard time sitting in a room and voicing why I think something is correct when I don't really see an outcome either way. Like, if I, like you said, lay all your problems out, it's like, where are we going with this? What is going to be the outcome of how the situation resolves itself? And especially, there's different times where you're going to be in a different environment where constructive criticism is going to be like a great way to talk about things, and to go back and forth to banter is going to be okay. And then there's going to be times when it's really just a sit back and learn moment, and that there's going to be a goal that you have on the table, and how you meet that goal, the compromising that goes into it. You really just have to look. I think it's a battle just looking towards that goal instead of all the little things that are going to come up along the way. And especially in this type of environment when there's a lot of social media, I see that respect online is a big deal, especially just even in my friend group that I see, and I'm like, you're not that person, like you're better than that, like you should have handled that a better way. And I think in the heat of the moment, when the fire's cooking, that you will say things that are probably not the best or in the way that you would want to handle those things. And the respect portion comes back around to respecting others, and then just respecting yourself, and knowing that, knowing the time to apologize, knowing the time to reconvene and really listen to them, and know that they're going to have opinions too, and that everybody's different, and that you might find that person that you agree with nonstop, and that they're your go-to person to talk about hard topics, and then you're going to find that person that disagrees with you about basically everything. And even though their reasons to disagreeing are probably not going to, in your mind, be up to par, it's just a result of where is this going to go, or how is this going to be a payoff for me in the end of, is there a goal here? Are they a friend? Do I want to build this relationship with them? Or is this just a point in the crossroads where, like, we're going to, like Joe said, be at two different points on a situation? And just have to let it kind of resolve on your own and just let it go, basically.
Kind of like gaining perspective without agreeing with their viewpoints.
That's very well said after that. Yeah, I would definitely echo, and I would thank you for the question and say, too, that I don't know if it's a real situation right now or one just to, be a good student and hopefully get an A in the class. But to also, consider how you would respond to the question yourself, right? If someone younger came up to you and asked that question, how you might philosophically respond to it, and then think of how that would apply, just to give yourself a chance to see what your own wisdom is about it. But in addition, I think, to what these two have shared, it's probably just assessing, who is this person in relation to what it is you're trying to accomplish at work? How much are they a teammate, someone who, does have authority over what it is you're doing, or maybe just someone who kind of comes in every now and then but isn't going to be much interference when you think of what you need to accomplish, the energy you need to be able to strive toward those goals, and your ability then to manage that conflict or the personality. So first I would just say assess how much you think you need to be able to tactically manage the relationship first of all, right? There are enough battles to choose on any given day in managing your own time and energy. And then in terms of tools to support you, I think asking open-ended questions of people on the street, right, like us, to just say, yeah, what's a different way to look at it, and how can I be more empathetic? And that will give me a little bit of stress reduction, because I'm like, right, they're not out to get me, they're just, going through their own thing. Maybe this is their sort of maladaptive practice, right? So how could you even come around to kind of supporting them in a generative way? But then, two, thinking of, do you have the supports that you need at your own workplace? Do you have someone who has supervision authority over the two of you? And so you can, through a more formal channel, talk about the challenges you're facing, not necessarily just in, oh, I don't like how he's doing that, or, she's doing this thing that's challenging to me, unless, of course, it's illegal or amounts to harassment and, go that route. But to talk in a professional sense of how that is, handicapping your ability to get work done, and how is it about moving toward the goals that you all as a team are trying to achieve. And then having your own sort of kitchen cabinet about it. Like, who are the people that you can go and confide in, right, to talk about the less professional aspects of it, and to be able to let your own emotions out about it and to vent, so that you're not, building that all up to a moment that it bottles up and then explodes. And so just a few things to consider as supports to you when trying to manage in a professional way that relationship after you've discerned how much energy you need to put into it. What are some ways that you can, navigate, and then also make sure that you are tending to what is real within you to be able to be emotionally intelligent about it. Would be a couple of things just to add on.
Thank you very, very much for the question. It's one of those questions that I think we continue to live in, as we go through life. We encounter various kinds of experiences where we have that kind of approaching difference. And how do we deal with it is really at the critical, who we are, and how do we live out that respect. Thank you. Other questions? They don't all have to be as deep as that question. That was it's one of those lifelong questions. All right, then I've got a couple more before we wrap things up here. Tell us a story of a CSS memory that you really cherish.
Oh boy, there's quite a few. I would say that my time at Scholastica was probably the highlight, tip of the roller coaster of my life thus far, and these two have careers to be proud of and have done all these amazing things, so I feel a little underaccomplished standing up here, but during my freshman year was pretty much that time of, I had just met these people, they were my friends, I'm living in this new place, let's go. And there was one specific day that it was sunny out, green grass, so it was past spring, and I was sitting up in my classroom on the third floor tower, and I look outside, and I see my two friends carrying my mattress out through the lawn. And I sat there, and I'm like, that is my bedspread, because my mom made it for me, so there's only one. And they had moved my entire room out to the lawn as a practical joke, and they thought it was like the most funny thing. And so I like slipped out of class and had to go all the way down. And so anybody knows if you've gone up the tower steps, you're out of breath, and I was running. So death sprint out through all the way down the steps, and they're laughing so hard because they think it's so funny. And then that kind of just like started this week of like constant pranking that we just like needed to get out of our systems. There was no snow left, so we were cooped up all this time. And then we upped it to, we bought a gorilla suit, and we'd go into the parking lot, and like kids were reporting to the campus security officer that they saw like an ape on campus or like Sasquatch, and that like we'd see the SUV come and just death sprint into the woods, and that we thought it was so funny. And it wasn't like this whole time we're just like having the most fun, this is great. And then we were walking back, and one of the officers saw us, and I was in a banana suit at the time, so it's funny because it's like a monkey and a banana. And the officer obviously knew who I was because I had been around and I was involved in stuff, and he just like shook his head, and he's like, okay, be safe out there. And like at that moment I was like, oh, we're doing something here. So then we made a couple tracks around the building, but then it was just like coming to an end of our freshman year. Then we were saying goodbye, and we were from the same place. So two of my friends were from North Dakota, another one from Iowa. So this was a time when we weren't going to see each other till the next year. And we had this like, since the fall, had put pictures of ourselves, like our graduation photos, in places that they would find to like be fun and creepy and stuff. And my best friend had put her prom picture with a guy I never even knew behind a picture frame. And when I got home then and I was unpacking all my stuff, I saw it taped, and she had like a note on there that said like, have a good summer, I'll see you in the fall. And at that moment it was like, I made a best friend that I had never known before coming to campus. And that at that moment it was just like, I can't wait to go back, and that was home to me now, and that I felt out of place being in my parents' house, and that even though the dorms are the dorms, it was like, I can't wait to get back and see all the kids that I had left, and just like come back for another year again.
I think I see some people on Amazon.com ordering some gorilla suits right now. A cherished memory of mine was also freshman year. My roommate and I were walking campus one night and probably just heading back to the dorms or something, but we started to see some lightning in the sky, and just were like, what's going on? It's not raining or anything. And so more lights started moving around. It looked like a little bit of a star shower, and we realized we were actually watching the northern lights like transform the night sky in front of us. So we just laid down on some sidewalk curb, somewhere safe, I think, outside maybe Summers Hall, and for 10 or 15 minutes we're just completely amazed by nature and the North Woods, and just being here as students to this new experience here at CSS amidst the natural beauty that surrounds this campus. So that was a spectacular event in nature, and that happened right here for me on campus.
So I'm going to come at this at a little bit different perspective. So I graduated in 2000 and then came back to work at the college in 2006 and was here for 7 years in a couple different capacities, from director of enrollment, teaching some classes, coaching. And I think that, and I have a litany of stories kind of like you've heard here, but to be honest, the part that I think of now more at my advancing age are the times that when I opened up an opportunity for mentorship for a student. And I think part of the reason I want to tell you that is because those opportunities are so plentiful here. There's so many different folks who work here, whether you're talking about in admissions or in advisement or your professors or the campus security folks or a coach, like who you have the opportunity to reach out to and connect with, to be able to shine a light on some of these challenges and these things that you're going through as a student. So I think that came full circle for me this past year when I officiated a wedding for a student who was near and dear to me during my time here. And I think part of what's really wonderful about that is you realize that even as you work through these 4 years, and there's so much growth and so much change and so much evolution and so much chaos and so much fun. But also that you're having an impact on the adults in the community's lives that are meaningful to them. So that they really kind of opt into a community like this and work like this because they want to be connected to you during these 4 years and during this growth period. So I think it's really exciting to have gotten to experience that in this community as a student and then gotten to give back to it as a member of the working community and the adult community here. And to see that come full circle, to be asked to be front and center during a really pivotal moment in somebody's life, to marry them together with someone else, is pretty neat to know that you can have that big of an impact as a mentor in this community. So I would challenge you and tell you that those doors are so wide open here for you to build those types of relationships with the adults in the community here.
So Diane, start us out on our final question here. If you were going to give one piece of advice to our present CSS students, what might that be?
Such a good question. My favorite quote is, "Success is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." And so that's one of the mantras by which I try to live, which is to say that where we are, we can do ourselves and those around us the best service by being there, by being present, and by giving all that we can in that moment. And that we don't need to be worried, except for sort of with a strategic eye, about the future, because that is what will come as a result of living into the opportunity, the question, the present that we have right before us. And so I think as a student, there's so many questions about what's the next semester going to be like, what am I going to do this summer, am I going to get this internship, what am I going to do when I have to graduate and get a job and move into the real world. And so I think that provides some amount of solace to say, you know, there's enough on your plate right now, and in thinking about, you know, May or J-term or the summer, and that's enough. You don't need to know what your journey is going to be like 10 years from now. If you'd asked me 11 years ago when I was graduating what I'd be doing today, I would not be able to tell you specifically what it is that I'm up to. I always knew that I would be working somehow in community, and that health had been an area that I'd focused a great deal, but with no amount of specificity could I have given to you. That may be part of the humanities track. But I want to reassure you that life is really about, again, that opportunity to learn. And so when I think, too, about Shirley Franklin, who was the mayor of Atlanta, she, for probably the 10 years prior, worked for the previous mayor, and always said she would never want to be in that role herself. It was too public-facing. It was not where she was. She wanted to operate behind the scenes and run things and manage the operations. And then lo and behold, 10 years later, she ran herself and had very successful terms as mayor. And so I think that kind of poses an opportunity and a challenge, actually, to not have to know even in 10 years what it is that you're up to, and to actually know that that might be something you're saying to yourself right now, I would never do that. And I think that's the fun in life. And so, again, with what we are given today, right now, before us, to do the best of what we can, knowing that that will help guide us into what will come. And that is very fulfilling, and ultimately some of that great mystery and opportunity in life.
So when I think about a journalism major from St. Scholastica, or really from any school, my friends used to pick on me a little bit that fundamentally I was learning how to ask like 6 questions: who, what, where, when, why, and how. That was a major in that. And I think that there's and certainly not to make light of it, because there's a huge set of skills that go with this, but I think the best advice I would give you is I think a lot of times, especially now, even when we really get focused on metrics and the ability to measurement, a lot of the questions we find ourselves struggling with, and a lot of our disagreements, when I think of the question asked about respect, when I think about where we struggle, it's oftentimes with the question of how. And we start there and we stop there. And I've spent the last couple of years of my life trying to put 2 different questions in front of that always. So my advice to you would always be to start out from a place of why. Like, why do I do the things I do? And let those drive you, because Diane's right, like, I didn't major in what I do now at all. And the way that my career path kind of presented itself was far more from relationships than it was through personal talent, skills, and abilities. But I think the question of why I do what I do is a real personal question, has always been one that's guided me in the right direction. And then I think, before you even get to how again, I think it's important to look around at the community you're with and ask yourself the question, who? Who do I want to do my why with? Who can I surround myself with that makes why I'm doing what I'm doing fulfilling, why I'm doing what I'm doing possible, why I'm doing what I'm doing, it provides the optimism and the motivation and the fuel for the hard work that might come with that, or the support for those types of things. I think then oftentimes the how emerges. It's still hard work to figure out what it might be, but I think when the why and the who are where you start, I think the how is easier to find out. So over the next 4 years, I would say, spend at least as much time, if not more, thinking about why and who than about how to do the coding in your computer information science classes, or how to ask those questions, or how to write that perfect paper. Really ask yourself why you are doing it, and why it's important to you, and why you're going to head in that direction, and then who you want to surround yourself with when you do it.
I would have to say my one piece of advice would be just to make the memories while you can, and that the memories are what's going to stick with you after your 4 years and after you walk across the stage. And right now you're finishing up the spring semester here, and you have a few more weeks to make an impact, make your freshman year what it's going to be, and it's going to stick with you throughout the rest of your years at Scholastica. And when you hear Joe talk about doing the why things and really developing who you're going to be after college, it's all a process, and that you're going to be there throughout these years, cultivating the person that you're going to be in the end, and that it's important to make the little memories on the side and do the fun things, and not to get too caught up in the stress or the anxiety of where are you going to be. And it's okay to be undecided, it's okay to have questions, and that when you're sitting beside each other in the gowns at the end of the 4 years, that you're going to have all these things that you did, whether it was eating donuts because you're stressed out over finals and you're sitting beside people crying together, and it's like that group, that moment, or you're coming back from Christmas vacation and you're calling this place home instead of your home back where you came from. It's all those little things are going to add up into this whole college memory that is going to be your 4 years here at Scholastica, and that the memories are going to stay. And that's especially being 2 years out, I still talk with my friends about remember these times, or this professor's retiring, and we'll talk about the classes we had, or specific moments that we had with them, and that it all sticks, and that you might not think that the little things are going to matter, but in the end, that's what's going to stick with you, and that you won't remember the times that you had to eat GDR food because you had nothing else in your fridge, or the times that you did really bad on a test. Those are going to morph into this huge success moment for you when you get to walk across the stage, and you remember that you started out as this little freshman not knowing what to do, or knowing what you want to do, and coming through all the years. And at graduation, it's a great time, and that even after graduation, when you start your careers, or you take time off to develop yourself even further, or take time to travel, it's all worth it in the end, and that the memories are what makes this whole process worth doing.
Thank you so much, each of you, for the tremendous wisdom, for the tremendous example of living out these values that you are in your workplace, in your lives. I'm going to ask Sister Kathleen Del Monte to come up. She's Associate Vice President for Mission Integration, and she will, in some small way, give us a little gesture of gratitude, but we really can't say it enough. Thank you so deeply for your sharing with us.
Gary's right. We cannot thank you enough. This has just been phenomenal. I hope you have experienced even a partial nth of what I have experienced listening to you, or share your stories and your hopes, your dreams, and successes, however you define that. When deciding how to thank you, it wasn't an easy decision, but what we came up with was, you might know Meredith Shifsky, who used to be on our faculty, and is the spouse of John Shifsky, and Meredith is an amazing artist and does beautiful, beautiful artwork in the form of calligraphy. So we experimented and came up with hand calligraphied and hand-drawn note cards, and there are 5 in each packet, and they're each different. They each are based on the 5 values, core values of the college, but Meredith purposely made each one a little bit different. And also in each packet, one has real gold leaf, and each one is different from one packet to the next. So thank you so very much. And Gary. Thank you doesn't come close to how we appreciate all that you are and all that you do and all the work you've put into this and the great, wonderful person that you are. So thank you so much. Blessings to you all.
And to all of you, in 7 or maybe 10 or maybe 15 or maybe 20 years, we'll ask you to sit up here and ask you to share your wisdom and your experience with first-year students and other students who will be sitting in your place. This is the journey that we're on. Saints, all of us together, trying to live out these foundational values, trying to chart our lives, our course, in a way that brings dignity and life and value and peace to our world. Happy St. Scholastica Feast Day. Have a good rest of the day.